So this morning in Road, I'm talking to Christine Cockcroft. Christine is one of the two Liberal Democrat candidates for the Frome North election, which is taking place on May the 5th. Christine, becoming a county councillor and committing to do that role for 5 years is a big responsibility, a big challenge. What makes you want to take that on?
Well, I was a Mendip district councillor for one term till 11, and it was actually a mistake that I didn't carry on. The papers didn't get put in. Having said that, I have had 5 major family funerals I've had to organise in the last 10 years in Chester or Norfolk, and so probably it's just as well. Now everything is starting to smooth out, all the legal, etc., etc. I am back here. I would like to carry on where I was. I have a lot of experience involving county. I'll come back to that in a minute. And I think this time for 5 years is probably a good idea. I think people are underestimating the level of work and problems that we have to solve over this, well, hopefully before the end of the 5 years, but to actually get a transfer from the system we've had of the 4 districts and the county to one unitary. I will stick my head out and say, on the whole, I'm in favour of unitary, but we are rather at the wrong end of the county. But I have seen it in Cheshire, which divided it into 2. And just as a sideline, Cheshire County Hall is now the headquarters of the University of Cheshire, not hinting. But I just feel that I have a lot of experience both in that way, in county and various ways in my own work. And I would really like to go forward and do it again, carry it all out again. I don't underestimate. I worked for one of the training and enterprise councils on a 5-year contract and a few other relevant things. I've worked in a lot of things where I've covered the southwest in general for work, and we have had meetings nearly always in Taunton because you're covering from one end to the other. So I'm pretty used to going to Taunton. When I was governor at the college, we've had a number of things like the academy and going back further, a few other things, finance, and spending time trying to sort those out. So I used to be quite familiar with the county hall. Sure. I also have, I'm not sure I should say this on camera, but I don't think it matters now. My daughter, who is just over 40, was what you call a Morecambe Bay baby, had very bad birth, and she had mild epilepsy and some eye problems until she was 20, when we are very lucky they all receded. But as a result of that, she had to go out of county to school because she was bullied and ostracised in Frome. Relevant to this now, but that's why she went out of county. And the same applies. I had to deal with county. Actually, I knew all the people pretty well, but in several aspects. Also with the technical training, serious consulting, I used to deal sometimes with serious special needs children. I was head of West Wilts Career Service for 5 years. I made the mistake of moving to head of careers at Poole at Bournemouth University, which, because I didn't think by then I was going to have any children, and the way life works out, so I've had to come back and go freelance for the last 40 years. It's a great pity I never stayed in Trowbridge, but in fact they've got rid of the career service anyway. But sorry, that's getting irrelevant. All I'm saying is I've got a very wide experience. I'm quite used to dealing with both the administration and the councillors on both sides, and not only here, and I'd like to apply that. I think, yes, I'm not as young as some of the others, but equally I have had experience of all the aspects of the childhood side, the older problems, and actually, sort of a 3-year cancer treatment, and I'm fine now. I'm been told I'm totally clear. So I've seen all sides of it.
Okay, thank you. So what would you say would be your 2 main campaigning issues in this election?
Yes, I think there still are campaigning issues, if you like to put it that way. I think that housing, it's coincidental that it's back in the papers this morning, is housing and planning are the ones that we really do need to tackle more than has been done. I mean, everybody's tried every sort of activity, way of dealing with it, but it still doesn't work. And the reason for that is, this is a little bit from my CAB days too, if a family or a single person or with children or whatever has no secure base, it destroys their lives. They cannot move on. Low income, and obviously it's all problems, but if you've got a base and you can stay in it, a lot of the time you can solve those problems. If you're suddenly told that 3 months' time, sorry, we want your house back, you never have any security. It's an absolute disaster. We have developed a very odd system, really, where the councils have almost outsourced a lot of their housing, not only to the housing associations, but also in the way that we pay housing allowance, housing benefit to people, and it doesn't, obviously there's a limit, but that then is costing the councils a fortune. Now, if all the money that had gone in this way had gone into council house or housing association buildings, they are still an asset to the council. And I just feel that we have to deal with this very much more. There are so many, this is too short an interview to go into it all, as it says in a very good article, one of this morning's paper. We need to look how we rebuild the council housing. I'm not entirely against, I'm not entirely against selling off council houses. There's the pros and cons to that, because there are many people who have paid rent for 20 years instead of a mortgage, and they would never have ever been able to get a mortgage because of low income, etc., and lots of other reasons. But it gives them security of the future. It also means that you may not be paying housing benefit to them when they retire, etc., because it's theirs. Because I think all of us know that some of us who are lucky enough to own, know that we wouldn't be able to live the way we do if we had to pay rent as well. That's all been done in the past. And also, I dislike the way that the housing associations vary greatly, but some are not for profit and some are, and a lot of the salaries in them are very, very high. Admittedly, it's not quite the same as some of the other things. I think I've probably said enough on that topic.
Okay, all right.
Well, you want another one as well, didn't you? You wanted 2.
Okay, please do.
I think perhaps if you'd like to move on to I think it comes under that as well.
Okay, in Linda Oliver, we've had a very active county councillor who lives in a neighbouring village to Road, and she understands firsthand the sorts of challenges facing villages near Frome face. How will you get to know the issues that are being faced?
You go to the parish council meetings, you talk to people. I have lots of friends, acquaintances from the past over the last 40 years in the villages, through my daughter being at school initially in Frome, lots of ways. So it's not difficult to, and they're not. Also, I lived in Epsom Scudamore, which is Wiltshire, of course, for 5 years before we only came back to Frome when Kate was 6 months, because we decided it would be easier to be a bit nearer to facilities.
So would you hope to come to our parish council meeting?
Oh, yes, I used to do that occasionally.
Right.
I can't go to everyone every time because there are quite a lot of them.
And they sometimes overlap.
They do, yes. But no, I mean, if you're going to be representing the county, then you do need to know the basic issues from everybody, and they're not the same in all villages, though obviously there's a similarity. Can I go back to one of your others? My other sort of point on, I think, if you like, my second policy. I think we are all totally sick of having a society which it makes it very, very difficult for ordinary people to live. Nearly everything is being removed. People say, well, you know, we lived on a very low income when I was young. Well, that's very true, and I very originally come from Merseyside, so yeah, I am well aware of deprivation. But it is much harder now to live on a low income, because if you have children, and if you haven't got children, but particularly your children, you need the internet. You want to give them sports and so on. You want to try and give us a wider life, and everything is very expensive. It's £8 now to swim at the Frome Centre if you're not a member. I know you can deal with it in other ways, but you don't always want a membership, and this sort of pricing out. And the other one is the total contempt of nearly everybody in organisations that service gas, electric, and everything. Basically, they treat you with complete contempt now. They have the salaries. High salaries. I'm not against, you've got to have fair remuneration. You won't get the right people otherwise. But high salaries, a lot of money going to shareholders. Again, they need their return for the use of capital. But look at the water industry. That used to be nationalised. Now it's privatised. And quite a lot, if you look at the figures, there's quite a high proportion is going out into bonuses and things, and yet we have not got the service. They have not invested in the way they promised to do, and that's just one example. So I give a more personal one at the moment, because I spent an hour and a half on Scottish Park the other day, because they've taken I happen to have a credit of £300, and they just took it, and so. And I still haven't got it back, actually. But anyway, all I'm saying is I think it's ordinary people, and we're all ordinary people to a certain extent, are finding it really difficult, and it's made more difficult by the total attitude. And obviously...
What about the attitude of Somerset County Council when you phone them? Do you think, is that something that needs to be looked at?
I have to be honest, I haven't phoned County Council for quite some time. I gather it's not brilliant, but I hope it's not that bad.
It's just difficult to get in touch with some of the key officers, which is why we need councillors who are prepared to battle on our behalf.
Yes, I've had more experience, I must admit, the last 10 years. My parents were outside Chester, but in Wales. And they retired to far North Wales. They're long dead, obviously. But I've had more experience to deal with Gwynedd, to be quite honest, who are actually quite good if you try and get hold of people. But I would agree with you that Somerset is probably... But it is difficult, isn't it? Because officers have to... I've had quite a lot to deal with planning latterly. It is quite difficult to... They have to do their job.
Yeah.
You cannot have everybody constantly interrupting them. So I do think sometimes you hear complaints and you think, well, how is somebody meant to carry on with the particular project? And so it's getting the happy medium. Yes, some councils, and again, many dealt with this at one time by improving their reception and whole customer service. That's 10 years ago, so I don't know what it's like now. Because of other situations, I've had to live elsewhere a lot of the time the last 10 years, so I'm a bit out of touch, which is why I need, I mean, I know it all, but you've got to... it was a bit of a last minute decision, because as to whether I was picked or somebody else, and then we decided in the end that my experience might outweigh other things, because I don't have to go and look at most of it. I really have worked nearly all over, and with technical training in small firms. Some I did. I did quite a lot with Honda, which is quite amusing under the circumstances. And I've got a Honda which I won't be getting again.
All right, Christine Cockcroft, thank you very much. I think from this interview, it's very clear you're not a paper candidate, you're a very real candidate.
Oh, very much so, yes, yes. I wouldn't do it just for a paper. Well, I say I wouldn't do it. If that's what they wanted, I would have done it. But that was the other thing. I mean, and who knows, we still got a long way to go. If I was a paper candidate and I won, it wouldn't matter, because I'm very happy to do it. Whereas perhaps some of the young and some others actually would get a bit taken by surprise. So that's why we settled on where we were. Am I being? Yes, I'm still being recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
All right, Christine, thank you very much for coming to be interviewed today. I know you've had COVID, which made it difficult at the early stage of the campaign, but I think you've given a very impressive account of yourself now, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.